is your time at Channel 4 and your award-winning documentary around HIV and AIDS. And for a lot of families out there, especially the stigma around their disabilities, I think just understanding a little bit more of the flavour that you bring to our organisation, being its lead, and I think that is a tremendous fragrance people really do want to smell.
Mm. Well, one of the great things I learned that really kind of captivated my attention was to see that you were involved with and it was a small pilot study in Merton, but and of course your work now with Oxford University, Health Trust, is that research is going to be the fundamental for change. And as a lawyer, and then as a filmmaker, that is what I was engaged in. People would come and present their situation. There was a gentleman, I shouldn't mention him by name, quite well known, and he had several children, and his affliction was not just mental health, but alcohol. And he would come into the general surgery with a 4-foot machete, which he would then start to swing around the place, of course, putting everybody into panic, not least the other clients were waiting to be seen, as well as the lawyers on the reception desk. And I was often called to come and calm him down, remove the machete from him and to put it to somewhere safe, and get him to generally just to calm down. Now, people like that, will be profiled and viewed in a very particular perspective. And of course, because we had several lawyers from working class, from Black and minority ethnic and background, Asian and Afro-Caribbean and African, it meant that we could bring, our dysphoria of attitudes and approaches to bear, so that you saw every different perspective on a situation. And so one of the things that race equality did at that time, looking at the judicial process, the law and order and crime, which is what Paul Boateng was primarily concerned and interested in, and me with mental health, is that what you do is factor in every situation as many different perspectives as possible, and even those that may not converge with your particular position, perspective, because at least that way now you get a wider view of what is being said and being thought as arguments that you may well encounter in your fight for change. And so research is a critical element for the professional as well as for the non-professional, because that is the only way you're going to get yourself properly informed. And of course, the health services, like the big hospitals, have a major challenge because they have the day-to-day routine work, as well as the institutions, because at St. George's, we're fortunate to have a university medical school sited on site, on the 46-acre site. And so it means that you have a tremendous in-depth access to tools now that are going to be useful in changing people's disposition towards mental health and to other illnesses that we in society will have to face, such as the aging population and all the challenges that it's going to bring, not only for families, but for the local communities and for the wider community of central government, because somehow, they have to make really strong decisions as to how long you keep someone alive when they're losing all their senses, and the involvement of their loved ones in those decisions. And of course, there's a economic cost always to whatever decision you choose to make. An economic cost for future generations if a loved one passes before they have a chance to properly interact and get to know them, as well as all those other areas where the impact of someone's passing will have an economic bearing. And so, to control these various factors, it's only with data and with information. And that's the great thing about ValueCare, because that is what it is actually learning to develop the AI tools to manipulate in such a way that they have, the correct information or the most accurate information as the patient's care and what is their need, and if things are developing down a particular path where intervention needs to take place to prevent the situation or their health circumstances from getting worse.
I think that's extremely well said, and that's really what kind of glued me to ValueCare when Steve started. It was just kind of understanding the power that this information can have. And for a lot of families that I'll often deal with, sit in the back office, making sure that we can get as many different local authorities engaged with, and then doing some pilots with them, and actually meeting the users as well. You really do get to understand that this information is not just a novelty. It's not just a gimmick. It is incredibly emancipating. And in fact, we often speak about some of the limitations that healthcare, can has, as you mentioned, with the strong decisions that need to be made. And I think there's also a missing factor in the room about the delayed decisions, not being able to give people care initially, not being able to give them that support initially. And those decisions, become far, far, far worse on. And the really thing, the important thing I've seen, and I've witnessed it countless times, is the power that actually giving this person information about their home environment, making sure that all their life signs, all their vital signs, from mold to nutrition to continence to whether they've fallen down, is monitored, enables them to really kind of make a better decision for themselves, make a better decision for their family members, but also to give those family members a little bit of breathing room. And that is an incredibly emancipating feeling. And then, of course, one of the great things that we have as well, and I would love to know, your views on this, and also some of the things that you did at Afro-Caribbean Mental Health as a founding member of a very notable organisation, is the kind of power of the mental health side, because you can provide somebody with the medicine, you can provide somebody with the physical support, but that mental health support is essential, because ultimately, as the old Bromley saying goes, he'll only get, if he's been knocked down on the pitch, he'll only get up if he wants to. And that kind of mental health element is tremendously impactful in progressing things forward. So, yeah.
I mean, what it kind of triggers in my head is we were kind of in that hotel opposite the BBC broadcasting house, where we were talking, and we discovered this extraordinary close friend of many, many years, whose house I lived in King's Cross for a while. Dr. Zahn Ningar had passed. And the reason I kind of mentioned that is that, it is by innovating with leading figures and academics in research, that you are able to find all the correct buttons that you may wish to push to kind of trigger a reaction that will lead things down a particular path. And one of the things that we did at Afro-Caribbean, we looked around, and me and another person who knew Zar very well and knew his work. He was a leading clinical psychologist, an upper first in his degree, and then went on to write and to publish and to provide hospital care as a clinical psychologist for many years until he sadly passed. And what we did is that we kind of like targeted individuals like that to bring in and to orchestrate, and create the alternative beyond the holistic alternative approaches to care, to empower, and as you use I think the best and the correct language, to emancipate the individual from their circumstances. And I think that, that was one of the great drives, actually looking around the community for professionals and wannabe professionals even, that we could bring in to our fold to create now this new approach to care. And I think with value care, that is one of the great opportunities